What is a free-range game developer? Free-range game developer is essentially somebody who is either a contractor or an indie or self-employed or some combination of these things. You may not be a free-range game developer now, but after about your 4th layoff, you'll start thinking about it. There were a number of panels at Captivate this year talking about how to start your little business up, how to make it as an indie, things like that. It was a good place to hear about that sort of thing. However, if you missed it, and you'll have to go next year. I'm going to try to talk about some slightly different things from what you might have heard there if you were at those talks. I'm going to talk about some more personal things and just some kind of funny side issues and some artsy things. So let's move on. On the topic of quitting your day job, you may not have a choice about quitting your day job. Your day job may quit you. First of all, while you have a nice fat salary, update your hardware. I didn't do this before I went off on my own, and that was a bad idea because now I'm stressing out about the fact that my desktop is older than some of my customers. The other thing you want to check on and update is your software. Make sure that's up to date. Deluxe Paint too. If you use Maya, make sure your Maya is up to date. If you're using Max, if you're using Visual Studio, you may be leaning on your company for that software. Keep that in mind. You want to pick up your own licenses for those things. Do not try to go unlicensed. The BSA will come after you and they will destroy your little tiny company. And if you're a sole proprietor, that liability falls on you instead of your LLC if you'd set one of those up. Save up some cash. You will have unexpected expenses, and you may have times when you cannot work because of medical problems or other issues which you did not predict. You may have family crises. You may have other things you need to deal with. You have the luxury of dealing with those things when you aren't having to count up your comp time or whatever, but at the same time, that's time you might not be working, and you still have to pay your bills at the end of the day. So it's good to have a buffer to lean on. And for Pete's sake, pay off your credit card debt. If you can't pay off your credit card debt, you do not have the discipline to be self-employed. Credit card debt is a chronic disease, and you need to cure yourself of it before you can be self-employed reliably. You do not want that bill showing up when you're dealing with the family crisis or aforementioned other issues. On the topic of selling out, how many of you have seen the musical Rent or the movie based on it before? For those of you who have, you may recall that, first let me talk a little about the background. It's basically a retelling 100 years later of La Bohème, which is an opera that was by Puccini. And it's about a bunch of crazy bohemians. They're artsy, they're fun, they're living in squalor, they're very poor and sick. And in Rent, you kind of have the same thing going on, except in New York's Lower East Side and updated for the Gen X crowd. Now, I hate Rent. And the reason I hate Rent is this guy right here, Mark Cohen. Mark Cohen is an independent filmmaker, so I should relate to this guy, right? Because I'm an indie, right? We're all indies here. No, so here's my problem with Mark Cohen. Mark Cohen can't pay his rent, and he gets an offer. I don't want to spoil anything for you, so I'm not going to tell you how this offer turns out. But he gets an offer to do some paying work, and he's like, oh no, I don't want to sell out. Really? You don't want to sell out? You can't pay your rent, dude. Your friends are dying, they're starving. I have a proof here about why Mark is stupid. To make art, you must be alive, right? Everybody agrees, right? To be alive, you must eat. Whoops, I gotta go back one here, we missed one here. To eat, you must buy food. To buy food, you must have money. To have money, you must get paid. To get paid, you must sell out. Now you may think, oh, well, I'll sell my art. Somebody's gonna buy my art, right? Are they? If you're making capital A art, the real kind of art, the art that people who don't want to sell out want to make, presumably, you're not making it to make money. Your intent is not commercial. And so you're only going to make money from that as some sort of ridiculous accident. If you build it, they will not come. So don't assume you're going to make money from your art. Don't assume you can just build something that you want to make, some either self-indulgent thing or some capital A art thing, and that people are just going to show up and hand you money. Even if you go to Kickstarter, it's not a matter of not having a client. It's a matter of having 2,000 clients. So to get paid, at the end of the day, you must sell out. Therefore, to make art, you must first sell out. Michelangelo did contract work. Da Vinci did contract work. Beethoven did contract work. Virgil did the Aeneid as a commission piece for the Emperor of Rome. Puccini, who wrote La Bohème, did commission work. He totally did. So, you know, back to Mark a moment ago, Mark Cohen, you know, does he think he's better than all these people? Does he really? Hipster, please. All right, now we're gonna talk a little bit about titles and whatnot. Let's be clear, self-employed does not equal unemployed. Just because you're self-employed doesn't mean you don't have a job. You're a business. You need to act like a business. But that applies to your clients as well. Those of you who hire contractors, don't nag them constantly about pulling them on board. They may be giving you this extraordinary performance ratio for the amount of hours they're booking, but that's because they're only charging you for their productive hours. The people that you're pulling in on salary, you're paying them to be chained to a desk. And there's a difference between those two things. If I don't need to be in there for core working hours, for core business hours, I can work when I feel really productive, and that may be 3 a.m. I'll still be available to you if you need to text me, contact me on Skype, or what have you. But at the end of the day, I'm only billing you for the hours that I am working, not when I'm Facebooking, not when I'm checking my email. I'll bill you if you make me come in for a meeting. But at the end of the day, the productivity you're seeing from me here is not necessarily the productivity you would see from me if I were a salaried employee, because then you're chaining me to a desk, and those may not be my most productive hours, but I'll be damned if I'm going to work more of them than I need to. Unemployed also does not equal self-employed. If you are between jobs, that does not mean you are self-employed. It also doesn't mean you're a contractor, and it doesn't mean that you're an indie. Don't create brand confusion. People need to know you're available to hire. On the topic of location, and this is where we get to home. You want to be in your ideal city for doing this sort of thing. And so that requires a low cost of living. That requires, where does this clicker have to point? That way? Okay. It requires a thriving high-tech community. It requires a thriving arts community. You need to be around other artisans and people who create art. You want a thriving small business community, somewhere with co-work places and things like that, where there are other small business people, where there are amenities for small business people. You want a laid-back atmosphere where people are not going to judge you for working from home, being self-employed, or otherwise being a bohemian weirdo. Whoops, it double jumped me again. There we go. You want somewhere where you have amenities like internet infrastructure, such as, say, Google Fiber. You want somewhere with a critical mass of game developers that you can then try to con into doing what you're doing so you can collaborate on projects. So where do you go? Well, duh. When I went to work for Jiyn, I was told I could work in either Redwood City, California, or I could work here. Well, I knew long-term what I wanted to do is what I'm doing now. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to do contracting to pay my bills, and then I wanted to work on whatever the heck I wanted to the rest of the time. So I thought, where am I going to go? Well, I'm not going to go to Redwood City. I can't afford to live there the way I'm living now. But in Austin, you've got the atmosphere you need, and it costs a lot less. So this was the place to be at the end of the day. And that's my story.